Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans. We have got a special program today. I've got Bill Koenig joining me again. We're going to be talking about Israel and the recent elections and everything that's going on over there, as well as the recent elections in Brazil and the elections in America. Before I go to Bill Koenig, let me say that we're having a trip to Israel, November the 29th through December the 8th of 2023. We will be taking a trip, a group, over to Israel. We want you to come with us. It's going to be In His Steps Israel tour with myself and also Pastor Ed Young. We're going to go to the Holy Land and go to the places where Jesus walked and talk about the places that are biblical and talk about the significance of that and end time prophecy. We're going to go to the places where end time prophecy is happening and also will happen. If you want more information or if you want to sign up to be a part of that tour, go to inspirationcruises.com/Evans. That information is right there on your screen. Now, this is not a cruise. We're going to fly over to Israel and we're going to tour over there, but it's inspirationcruises.com/Evans. I would love for you to be a part of this. Bring a group from your church, bring a group of your friends or your family. The more the merrier. We would love to have you come. So go on inspirationcruises.com/Evans. It'll give you more information. I'm very excited today to have Bill Koenig join me again. Bill is a journalist and served as a White House correspondent. He has a news service called Koenig World Watch Daily. His website has constantly updated stories from a large variety of news sources and can be found at watch.org. Bill is currently in Jerusalem, and we're going to be talking today about the most recent election and the ramifications of it related to Israel. Bill, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jimmy. Great to be with you.
Well, you're in Jerusalem right now, and there's been a big election that just took place. And I mean, this is a right-wing coalition, if there ever has been one. And so talk just a little bit about what you're experiencing over there and what's going on.
I'll tell you what, Jimmy, when I checked, I got my rental car on Tuesday night. The lady happened to be a conservative. She was thrilled with the outcome. And she also said, you cannot believe how many people, Jewish people from all over the world, flew to Israel to vote.
Wow.
And that's incredible, Jimmy. I mean, when you think about people taking that effort to come and vote, it was also the largest vote turnout since 1999.
Wow.
And this is a right-wing slate. We haven't had anything like this in Israel for a long time. And there's a lot of excitement from the people I've talked to in Israel. This is very unique. You're not going to have a splintered cabinet. You're going to have a solid right-wing cabinet. You got an extreme or two in the right, far right. But for the most part, the Israelis that I've spoken to are very pleased.
It's incredible. I love Benjamin Netanyahu. He is such a great prime minister, has always been such a great leader. But Israel, they've had 5 elections in the last several years.
That's right, 4 years.
Trying to put together a coalition government, which is very much different than our two-party system. But let's talk about Ben Gvir for just a minute, because he's in the news. Now, this is an ultra-nationalist Zionist party, is that correct?
That's exactly right. And that has my friends here in Israel, some especially the Jewish believers here in Israel that are concerned about that. They think he is way too far right. They've shared some things he's done and said over the years, and it's nothing that we would back or appreciate or support. So that will be Netanyahu's challenge,
yes,
is that extreme right wing led by that gentleman.
Well, what's his agenda? What's the ultimate outcome of Ben Gvir's agenda in this coalition government?
Well, it's he's not favorable to the Arabs. He also does not want to see any land given up by Israel to the Palestinians, but his very tense relation with the Arabs, Palestinians in the state of Israel, that's the greatest concern, is his extreme positions on Arabs within the land.
Right. So Zechariah 12 is the scripture that you kind of base your ministry on.
That's right.
Jerusalem becoming, just this heavy, burdensome stone, diplomatic nightmare for the world, which it is. So now you have had Lapid as prime minister going around the world and to the United States saying he's in full support of a two-state solution. Okay, which has the United Nations, Biden, they're all just elated that there's finally a leader in Israel. Now you have Netanyahu stepping in, and what's going to happen?
Well, I tell you what. What's really interesting, Jimmy, is Lapid's comments on September 21st at the UN, as an Israeli interim prime minister, fully supporting the two-state plan, pressured by Biden, was a great talking point and election point, which had a significant reason why the right wing of Israel, the voter turnout was at the level it was because of those statements that he made at the UN.
So he is not very popular in Israel. You would say that. Obviously, they got voted out. So,
yeah, they got voted out, and he's popular in his left-wing base, but he overstretched things. He was influenced by the Biden administration, went right along with it, and that was probably the worst thing he could have ever possibly done. Biden's already been on the phone to Netanyahu. They had an 8-minute conversation, and in essence, Biden said, let's make history together. Well, we know what that means, leading to a two-state plan and a peace deal.
What's going on diplomatically right now? Because I know that there's been Blinken and all the different diplomats over there. Are they trying, in what ways are they trying to pressure Netanyahu, or will they be pressuring Netanyahu to make a deal? And what do you see? Now, we know the end of the Bible. We know what's going to happen ultimately to Jerusalem. Do you think Netanyahu is going to play an important role basically in withstanding the world community in them trying to divide Jerusalem?
Well, that's going to be very interesting. And the people that I network with here and people that we do behind the scenes activity with, we're hopeful that Benjamin Netanyahu will stand as strong now as he ever has. He basically had his first government collapse after the White Plantation Agreement in 1998. And then he had his second government collapse right after the delivery of President Trump's Peace to Prosperity plan on January 28, 2020, and his signing at the White House of the Abraham Accords on September 15, 2020. And then that led to his government collapse. So this is basically his third chance. What's interesting is the previous other two times when he went along with the plan, the Clinton efforts and the Trump efforts, it literally cost his government.
Yeah.
And here he is, Jimmy, once again in a very key, important position. And we just pray that he'll stand for the covenant land of Israel as he's never have before and be blessed for it, according to Genesis 12:3.
That's right. So the Trump deal, the deal of the century, essentially gave the West Bank to the Palestinians. Is that correct?
Yeah, in that plan, with his map, between 70 and 80% of the land would be set aside for the Palestinian state. In other words, they continued the Palestinian state narrative. Whether they would have accepted all the terms or not, the Trump Peace to Prosperity plan continued the narrative of a two-state plan with a Palestinian state within within Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem.
Right. So that was the problem, and the Israeli people reacted against him, because I read a poll last week that said 70% of the Israeli people are against a two-state solution.
That's right. And it's interesting. The lady that checked me in at the airport, she said, "We've given it a try. We've given the two-state plan a try." I mean, this is the rental car lady at the Ben Gurion Airport. She says, "We've given it a try. It hasn't worked. It's time to move on." And that was a conservative voter.
When the United Nations partitioned Palestine back in 1947, the Jews went along with it, and when they declared their independence, the next day the Arab world declared war on them, tried to wipe them off the face of the map. And so
that's right, 5 Arab countries.
And that's when they took all that land, the Sinai and all the other land, the West Bank and all that land that they didn't have, in response to being attacked. And so since then, there's just been this back and forth. So the maritime agreement that was just made with Lebanon, that seemed a little bit freakish from my perspective, because basically the Lapid government gave them there was no negotiation really. They asked for this land in the ocean where there was the gas interest out there, or Hezbollah was going to start firing rockets at the Israeli natural gas operations. What is the sense that you have being in Israel right now? Again, they're giving up land for peace. That's what it is.
Well, that's going to be interesting, primarily because former ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, Trump's ambassador, he came out strongly in opposition of it, which is uncharacteristic for a previous ambassador to do that. Also, Benjamin Netanyahu and other members of his Likud party also said this is a terrible deal. And then on the flip side, Hezbollah through Nasrallah threatened to attack Israel if they didn't go along with the plan the United States brokered. Right. So I think that speaks for itself, Jimmy, on just how bad a deal it is.
Yeah, it's terrible. But on your previous visit here on the show, we talked about your book, Eye to Eye, which I hope everyone gets and reads, because you document, 124 specific instances where the United States government pressured Israel to give up land, and the natural catastrophes that have happened here, and most recently, Hurricane Ian.
That's right.
In direct response to us pressuring Israel to give up more land. And
that's exactly right. Hurricane Fiona and also Hurricane Ian were directly happening, started and they were happening at the time that Biden was at the UN, Lapid was at the UN, and Trudeau from Canada also complemented Lapid's two-state plan. So yes, it totally bookmarked the effort by the United States, Israel, and the Canadians to accept a two-state plan at the same time of Fiona and Ian.
Well, this is being recorded on November the 8th. This is Election Day here in the United States, and we're praying for, God to move. We desperately need a move of God politically and spiritually in America, because these are dark, dark days to say the least. But in Israel, whatever America does obviously has a big bearing on what happens in Israel. And so Netanyahu now is stepping into, first of all, a coalition government where he has extremists that he's in bed with politically, that he has to deal with that. The other thing that he has to deal with is the pressure from the United States and the United Nations on him to accept this two-state solution, which, like you, I don't believe he will. And the times he's made that attempt before, it cost him his job. But also, let's talk for just a minute about the Gog and Magog issue, because Iran is a major issue. They're in Syria. I think that Israel's bombing them just about every day. Russia's there, Turkey's there, Syria's there. What do you see happening related to the Gog and Magog coalition? Is it a big deal? Is it a deal at all?
Oh, it's coming together quickly, Jimmy. Matter of fact, about an hour ago, I met a pastor from the Caucasian Mountain area, and he said through his news sources is that Russia and Iran are working on an agreement to cooperate even more militarily. He was very, very concerned about that, because that's likely part of the Gog-Magog coalition of Ezekiel 38 and 39, the Caucasian Mountain area. And also, we're watching Iranian drones being used in the Ukraine that Russia's purchased. And the Ukraine is asked for us to ask Israel to assist in this area to create a defense against those drones. And that's angered Russia. And there's a possibility very soon that the pretty much ability for Israel to go into Syria or Lebanon at any time to take out Iranian weapons could be coming to a close.
So I read an article about how Netanyahu, it's believed that he will bomb Iran if there's not a diplomatic solution found to stop their nuclear aggression. I don't believe there's a chance on earth that they're going to stop their efforts to get a nuclear weapon if they already don't have one. But he has the resolve to bomb them. And one of the things that I have, and this is just my personal opinion, but when Ezekiel says that God's going to put a hook in their jaw and drag them down, that's an animal hook that you use to drag an animal around with. And it's, in other words, they're not going to make the choice. He's going to make it for them. He's going to do something so provocative that they're going to just, immediately respond. And my personal opinion is that if Israel bombed Iran, and this is a very real possibility in the next months or couple of years. 10 years ago, we were talking about Iran's nuclear plans, but today we're talking about a reality that they are either there or almost there to having enough enriched uranium and a delivery mechanism to strike Israel. And so is that being talked about, the potential of Israel bombing Iran?
Yes, absolutely. What's interesting in the polls here, 75% of Israelis would prefer a Netanyahu in government at the time of a conflict with Iran.
Wow.
I think that's another reason he did so well, Jimmy, is because he's strong enough, committed enough, and well aware of the threat of Iran. The reason he hadn't previously is probably because he's had some defense ministers that have opposed that. It is getting closer for sure. The relationship, it's so ironic that the situation in the Ukraine has created tension between Russia and Israel at a level that we've never known.
Right.
One other, Mordecai Kadar, he's one of the top intel experts in Tel Aviv, said a few months ago, he said the benefit of having Netanyahu in office, he could always pick up the phone, call Putin immediately and get right through to him, or get on a plane and go and meet with him in Moscow, where Bennett and Lapid didn't have that benefit.
Right. So
interesting players. I think we're definitely getting closer to that happening. I had a discussion with another friend of mine today on that who covers this very closely, Chris Mitchell with CBN News. And we know we're close, Jimmy. We're waiting for a catalyst or that hook that you said in the jaw. It could happen overnight or it could be a little bit later, but we are certainly quickly moving in that direction. The question is how quick.
Well, everything, all the pieces are coming together. And you just see, like the Gog and Magog war, I've taught Bible prophecy for 40 years. And for most of that time, it was just, you were talking about it, but everybody was at home, doing their thing. Now we're seeing the armies coming together, all the players coming together, closer ties between Iran and Russia and all of them. Let's talk about the Temple Mount for just a minute, because you're right there by the Temple Mount. It seems to me that there's been a dramatic increase of activity on the Temple Mount. And whereas just very recently it was illegal for Jews to go up to the Temple Mount, now they're going up by the thousands. We see the 5 red heifers that were just flown from Texas over there. The Temple Institute, very excited about that. What are you hearing over there? What's happening related to the Temple Mount and the rebuilding of the temple?
Well, that's interesting because I was with Byron Stinson. He's a Texas businessman who was involved in bringing the red heifers over to Israel. And I met with him on Monday along with Saki, Rabbi Saki, who was very involved in bringing those 5 red heifers here to Israel. There's obviously, this is, as Hal Lindsey would say, this is the most viable 34 acres on the planet, the most contentious.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think that under Lapid and Benefit, there was a little bit better cooperation between Israel and the Palestinians. It'll be interesting, but there's talk, about the eventual third temple. And what's interesting is about 20% of the Jews in the world are Orthodox. It would be more prone to be interested in the third temple, where 80% Reform and Conservative are not.
Right.
So for those of us that are watchmen, this could be very significant. All they need is the ashes of one pure red heifer. There's been a few candidates over the last 20 years, but we're at a point right now, we could be getting close in a year and a half, 2 years, when that would be the point of preparing the ashes. Just all it takes is one. Right now there's 5 here in Israel. So that's going to be interesting to follow from this point forward, especially with this new government.
Well, I talked on my last program about they've actually practiced. First of all, they had 600 Levites practicing the Levitical singing, and then they practiced burning a heifer see how to do it and how much ash they would get from it and all that kind of stuff. So just a lot of stuff is happening that hasn't happened before. There are things happening that haven't happened for 2,000 years, so it's very exciting. So you were just in Brazil on your way to Israel. You were with President Bolsonaro's wife, I believe. You had a prayer breakfast. Talk about your time in Brazil.
I was there for 5 days. We were there 4 days before the election with the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast team, who in 2018 had the first Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast in Brazil. At that time, Bolsonaro was very low in the polls, and supernaturally, he's a great supporter of Israel, a great lover of Israel, was baptized in Israel in May 2016, spent time at the garden too. A friend of mine basically showed them around. He is a solid Christian, but who's really an incredible Christian woman is Mrs. Bolsonaro. She loves Jesus. She loves Israel. Even when she went to vote, she had a T-shirt on with a Star of David on it and said, "God bless Brazil. God bless Israel."
Isn't that great?
It was remarkable to see. And, there was concern about the election and election integrity. That will be debated here in the next week or two. But Bolsonaro is incredibly popular. What's interesting about the vote pattern there was very similar to what happened in the United States in 2020, when President Trump did so well with the down ballot in the House and Senate, gained House and Senate seats, but he didn't become president. Same thing with Bolsonaro. He was successful throughout the country. He did really well in Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, areas that typically the leftists do better. He is a very popular president. It's been a devastating, at this point, defeat. A lot of protest on the streets, a very strong Christian base in Brazil, very passionate people, great supporters of Israel. So we were with Mrs. Bolsonaro the day after the election, prayed with her, continue to pray for her. The great thing about it, this prayer breakfast opened some serious doors in Brazil as well as Italy in October, when the new president or prime minister, the new president of Italy was also a speaker at the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast Rome. So wanted to throw that in, but there's great favor for Israel in Brazil, and we continue to pray for a positive outcome of this recent election.
So was there a concern about the manipulation of the election electronically, the same as there was here in 2020?
Correct. The equipment there is used. It's a Smartmatic equipment. It had been used in Venezuela before. Bolsonaro was concerned about that equipment. I did a report on the Smartmatic equipment in November of 2020. Found out Lord Mark Malloch Brown, one of the major participants in the Smartmatic machine, is also involved with George Soros through the Open Society that Soros developed. Also, one of the president of the board of directors of Smartmatics was one of Joe Biden's transition officials, transitioning into taking over the White House. So we're watching it very carefully. The Smartmatic equipment has a bit of an interesting history, and we're afraid we saw some of the similar patterns that we saw in the United States, also in Brazil.
So this is election day in America. Now we'll be posting this tomorrow, so many of the results I think will have already come in. We'll know kind of what's happening. What's your thought about the election that's going on right now in America?
If it is a fair and honest election, I think this is going to be an enormous landslide for the Republicans in the House and 3 to 5 in the Senate. The polls that I've looked to through pollsters that I respect and have a good track record show a overwhelming success for the Republicans in the House and Senate. So I expect a very positive outcome tomorrow.
Very good. Well, we'll know soon. And on this program, I'd try very hard to let people know this is not a Republican program. It is a conservative program. But the issue on the ballot is you're talking not just about Republican, Democrat, you're talking about abortion and pro-life. You're talking about the woke agenda and the anti-woke agenda, the rights of parents. And literally, in many cases on the left, they want to take the rights away from parents and let the teachers and the administration decide what 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds are basically taught pornography and gender reassignment and all those things. So this really is, not with every single race, but in many races, it really is a battle between light and darkness and the future.
It is. Absolutely. They thought they would get let me put it this way, Jimmy. Democratic Party thought the Roe versus Wade decision, an emphasis on abortion and abortion rights, even up to the time of birth, and also promoting the LGBTQ agenda all the way even to kindergarten
That's right.
age, and also pushing critical race theory would be enough for them to be successful. It was a total misread of the American voting population. There's going to be big gains in the Hispanic vote, the Black vote, white working women. I think, people are tired of the inflation. They're tired of the high price for gas. They're tired of the high price for much of what they have in necessities, what they're having to pay for necessities. And I think Senator Tim Scott put it best a couple weeks ago in an event with Hannity, that the majority in the Senate and House has cost the United States taxpayers an additional $4 trillion in debt.
Wow.
And that is onerous and going to have a great impact, not only in this generation, but future generations.
Well, this has brought people together like no election I've ever seen. If there's anything good that's come out of the last 2 years, and when you see parents standing up and going to school board meetings and all those kinds of things, and just this defund the police movement and the trying to basically dismantle our criminal justice system, it's caused a lot of good people to stand up, and that's what we're going to need in America. Any other thoughts that you have, Bill?
Yeah, I think great point. I think the independents looks like through the polls are overwhelmingly going to vote conservative, vote Republican. I think we're even going to see Democratic crossover. There's a lot of people in the Democratic Party concerned about the future of America. And I think as well as the groups that I mentioned, Hispanic, Blacks, white working mothers, I think we're going to see a tremendous move to a more serious administration. And I think also great for Israel, Jimmy, because the Republican Party is without a doubt the best friend that Israel has in Congress.
Absolutely. And your book, Eye to Eye, and again, William Koenig, and it's on Amazon.com, but your book, it's absolute total evidence that the policy of America toward Israel affects us all. This is not just some, Vietnam or the Philippines or, some other nation out there. This is Israel, and that God is in an everlasting covenant with. And whenever you touch them, there's going to be you bless them, you're going to get blessed. You curse them, you're going to get cursed. And we have been devastated as a nation because of the poor policies, the anti-Israel policy that the Biden administration represents right now. So we need politicians that will come in and support Israel, and that's a big deal. God bless you, Bill. I love what you do. I love your ministry. I appreciate your input. Very insightful. I hope you have a wonderful time there in Jerusalem. I hope to get to talk to you again soon.
Look forward to it. God bless you, Jimmy. Thank you.
God bless you. We're going to go now to the subscriber-only portion of our program. If you're not a subscriber to endtimes.com, go to endtimes.com, $7 a month. $77 a year, you get the entire Tipping Point podcast right now, plus videos and articles that come out all week long, plus access to our archives, and there's a 7-day free trial. And so if you're interested in becoming a subscriber, go to endtimes.com and try us out for 7 days. I promise you're going to like it. It's going to be the best $7 a month you ever spent, because we're going to give you information in the news, from Scripture, from prophecy, from myself, from also Pastor Greg Laurie, Dr. Mark Hitchcock, and many others that will help to keep you encouraged and informed in these important days that we're living in. So if you're not a subscriber, go to endtimes.com, become a subscriber so you can see everything. If you are a subscriber and you're watching this on YouTube, you need to go over to endtimes.com to see the full podcast, or you can respond to your subscriber email that we sent you. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I want to start with this article. I've got some questions that you guys have written in that I'm going to answer, but I've got some good news on today's show. I know sometimes I read some stuff on here, show some stuff that is upsetting, just to kind of document the times that we're living in. This is something that's really, really encouraging. And this article, it's from CBN News from Talia Wise. The title is Influencer Oli London Detransitions After Finding Faith in Christ, Pushes Back Against Trans Ideology. Let Let me read a little bit of this article. It says social media influencer Oli London has gained millions of followers over the last few years on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. But he shocked the world last week after announcing that he would no longer be living his life as a transgender woman, but instead would embrace his God-given identity as a man. Oli told CBN News his decision to detransition all began with finding God. And this is him now. I actually started going to church 3 months ago, several times a week now. I've been reading the Bible, I've been learning online and watching YouTube videos about the teaching of Jesus, and that has really helped me in my detransition. It made me realize that God made me the way He did, and I should just stick with who I am, be who I am, and just find happiness. It says, born a white man, now listen to this, London has had 32 plastic surgeries totaling more than $300,000 to make him look like a Korean woman. He was on the verge of traveling to Bangkok, Thailand to undergo gender reassignment surgery and get breast implants when God began to deal with his heart. He says, I was going to church and I was thinking, why am I doing this? What's the reason behind this? God made me the way I am and I shouldn't be chasing this. It's not right. In a YouTube video titled, Explaining My Detransition, London told his 60,000 subscribers that after living as a woman for the last 6 months, he now wanted to live as a man. He believes if he had the surgery, he would have regretted it. I was just experiencing gender dysphoria and I would have ruined my life and been super unhappy, he told CBN News. London is the latest and most notable figure to detransition and joins a host of others who share that altering their gender did not make their life any easier. The 32-year-old's decision has not come without pushback. Now listen to this. I almost feel like the trans lobby has become a cult, he explained. I left the trans community and suddenly they attack me. They try to dehumanize me. They call me names online. They compare me to some very horrible people. I saw one tweet comparing me to Hitler, but I just ignore that and don't pay attention to the hate. London is now using his platform to speak out about the harmful effects of pushing transgender treatments to minors. I just want to speak up because there are a lot of people out there who are confused about who they are, he said. I just want people to be the way they are born, the way God intended. London bluntly added, children should not be transitioning. He specifically criticized a social media influencer named Dylan Mulvaney. The 25-year-old grew his 8 million follower fan base after transitioning to a woman less than a year ago as a part of a comedy act. The TikTok personality recently earned in an interview with Joe Biden to talk about how deeply wrong it would be to deny life-altering treatments to confused minors. London shared that this is the time to defend kids and allow them to just be children. In America, there's a lot of school boards that are trying to push these ideas on kids as young as 5, he said. They're trying to change children's pronouns, change children's gender. There are some cases where teachers will actually lose their job for misgendering a child, which is so crazy. Teachers are there to educate, and I think it's wrong that many woke school boards are pushing these gender ideologies on kids because kids are easily influenced. And so I love this. I have known about this story for a long time. It's very public. $300,000 in plastic surgery trying to look like a Korean woman. And he found God. And I want to say this. First of all, this is great news. This is so wonderful that someone with this platform would come out like this. Notice how they hate him now. As much as they loved him for doing what they wanted him to do, now they hate him. This is just who they are. But thank God that he has found God. He's found Jesus. He's learning more about Jesus. And he's standing up and he's saying, this is wrong. It's not going to... You just need to be who God made you to be. And so I pray to God that what he's saying here, along with many others that are detransitioning, I pray that he will have an influence on many people. But here's what I want to say, the power of prayer. Now, I don't know who was praying for him. Somebody was praying for him. And if you have someone in your family, this is being pushed on everybody, young and old. If you have someone in your family that is struggling with this issue, you need to pray for them and believe God, because he began to be troubled. Thoughts began to come to his mind. As much as Satan can deceive us, God can break through with his love and with his truth. And all he was trying to do is find out who he is. And now he realizes he is who God made him to be. $300,000 on plastic surgery. It's the saddest thing in the world. Obviously, he can never look again the way God made him to look, but he can be who God made him to be, and God forgives him. There's no sin that God won't forgive. When we come to him and repent, God will forgive any sin. But this is good news here, and it just reminds us the power of prayer and the love of Jesus to every single person. Because not long ago, he was radicalized and doing everything, living a very perverse lifestyle, and now he's found God, and prayed that his influence will influence many other people. Let me answer some questions you guys have written in. This is David. If the Gog-Magog war doesn't happen until after the tribulation has begun, then what could be the impetus for the 7-year peace agreement? It's a great question. Let me first of all say there are people that say that the Gog and Magog war doesn't happen until the end of the tribulation, because Revelation 20 says when the 1,000 years have expired, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. There, Gog and Magog, there is an idiom. It's not talking about the Gog and Magog of Ezekiel 38 and 39, because those are very specific regional nations around Israel: Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, Syria, all those nations there. So it's two separate events. But it is possible that the Gog and Magog war could happen after the tribulation begins. Dr. Mark Hitchcock believes that the Gog-Magog war will happen probably around the middle of the tribulation. And I have a great amount of respect for him. But regardless of when it happens, I believe there's going to be a deal. And by the way, the reason that I believe that the Gog and Magog war would happen around the time of the rapture and around the time of the 7-year covenant that the Antichrist makes with Israel, according to Daniel chapter 9, is because after the Holocaust in World War II, the world had great sympathy for the Jews, where there had been so much anti-Semitism before. 6 million Jews were killed, and now you have this worldwide sympathy. Well, in the Gog and Magog war, it's going to be the Arabs that attack them, the Russians and the Arabs, the Muslims that attack Israel. They're the ones that are going to be killed. But God is going to glorify himself in the sight of the nations. There's going to be a tremendous respect and awe toward Israel that comes out of the Gog and Magog war. So in my mind, that would set up the deal that the Antichrist comes and says, these people tried to destroy you. We want to make a peace covenant with you, or confirm a peace covenant with you for 7 years, and here are the terms of those 7 years. That makes sense to me. But it could be that I'm wrong, and that the Gog-Magog war is going to happen, just the way Ezekiel 38, 39 says. If it happens after the tribulation begins, I've just written down several things here that could trigger a negotiation. One is a rebuilt temple for East Jerusalem. The Antichrist comes, and the Jews, they want their rebuilt temple. It could be that they get their red heifer by then, the spotless red heifer, and they've got 5 candidates over there right now. But it could be that the Antichrist comes and says, if you'll give us this part of East Jerusalem as a capital for the Palestinians, we'll give you, the Temple Mount, enough room on the Temple Mount to build your temple. Could be. It could be intense world pressure combined with sanctions against Israel, because right now the Biden administration, the United Nations, they are very supportive of a two-state solution. Netanyahu, who is now the elected prime minister of Israel, he's very much against the two-state solution for Israel. So it could be that there's tremendous pressure that comes, and that would be the reason. The other one is the threat of war. Now, Israel just gave up, changed the maritime boundary between Lebanon and Israel and what they said in the negotiation. Really, there weren't any negotiations. They gave Lebanon everything they wanted. But what Israel stated openly was, we don't want war with Hezbollah. So all of Hezbollah's terrorism, they're terrorists. Hezbollah is a bunch of terrorists. All of their terrorism just paid off. The purpose of terrorism is to terrorize someone so that they give you what you want. They got it. And so the threat of war, the promise of a temple, or maybe all three combined. So there are other possibilities. In my mind, it just makes more sense that the Gog and Magog war would kind of soften the soil for Israel and lead to the deal with the Antichrist. I could be wrong. This is Mary. I saw that the Prime Minister of the UK might move their embassy to Jerusalem. Would this mean anything significant? Well, that's Rishi Sunak, is the new Prime Minister of the UK, very pro-Israel. He did make overtures when he took office that he wanted to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He now has said he will not do that. It's just risky, especially with the prime minister before him being ousted in such a short period of time and being so unpopular. I think he's playing it safe. That's what politicians do. Many politicians, American presidents, promised that they were going to move our embassy, never did until President Trump. And so he said he would, but now he's saying he won't. If he did move the embassy, I think it would just be kind of a more inflammatory message to the world concerning Jerusalem. Zechariah 12 says, in the end times, God's make Jerusalem a burdensome stone and a rock of offense to all the nations that surround there. And that's exactly what's happening. The last scene of human history is the whole world marching against Jerusalem to take it. And so I think it was a nice gesture. I think he's a good man, it sounds like. Will be a good prime minister, but he just didn't want to pay the price politically to move the embassy. This is Jeffrey. In the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24:6, Jesus speaks of wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. Does the end in this context refer to the rapture or some part of the tribulation timeline? Let me read the entire text here, Jeffrey, and we'll find it. Matthew 24, Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. You will be hated by all nations for my name's sake, and then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. So you see all the things that Jesus is talking about there, pestilences, earthquakes, various places, famines, that's happening right now. In fact, the gospel is being preached. People are being martyred. Christians are being martyred. False prophets are deceiving many. The gospel via satellite, via missionaries, via the church is being preached all over the world. This broadcast right now is going all over the world. And so you could say that the end is going to be the rapture because all of these things are happening. But all of those things intensify in the tribulation. I really believe that this is speaking more before the rapture and before the tribulation, because when you say there'll be earthquakes in various places, pestilences and famines, when you get to the tribulation in Revelation chapter 6, you're talking about a quarter of the earth's population dying in one plague. You're talking about mass starvation. The rider on the black horse, it takes a day's wage to buy, the barley or the wheat. And so a quarter barley or a quarter wheat or 3 quarts of barley. So this is minor compared to the tribulation. So I really think this is referring to leading up to the rapture, but it could include some of the tribulation. Now this is Revelation 14, when Jesus said this gospel will be preached into all the world, then the end will come. Revelation 14, I looked and behold a lamb standing on Mount Zion, with him 144,000 having his Father's name written on their foreheads, and heard a voice from heaven like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of a loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one can learn that song except 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heaven and earth, the sea and springs of water. Now, this is the scripture, Revelation 14, where we see the gospel via the 144,000 and via an angel supernaturally preaching the gospel to every tribe, nation, and tongue. So I can tell you today, as a fact, that the gospel being preached all over the world. But I can tell you even more so during the tribulation, supernaturally, the gospel be preached to every human being on the planet. So when Jesus said this gospel will be preached into all the world, then the end will come, it is being preached into all the world right now. But to every creature, that happens during the tribulation. So you take this either way. I think it's more relating to before the rapture. This is Kathy. I just read about the government not allowing the use of credit cards to purchase ammunition. How does this fit in with buying and selling as in the days of Noah? So the government is not disallowing credit cards related to gun purchases and ammunition. This is an article here, and it says new credit card code is the first step toward preventing gun violence, advocates say. And this is from Becky Sullivan. It says gun control advocates are cheering a new change in the credit card industry that they said could help prevent gun violence. This week, credit card companies Visa, MasterCard, and American Express all said they would adopt a new code to categorize sales at gun shops, a move that advocates say will make it easier to flag suspicious gun sales. Today's announcement is a critical first step toward giving banks and credit card companies the tools they need to recognize dangerous firearm purchasing trends, like a domestic extremist building up an arsenal, and report them to law enforcement, said John Feinblatt, president of Everytown for Gun Safety, a gun control advocacy group, in a statement last week. All purchases made with credit cards are categorized with what is called a merchant code, a special code assigned to various types of businesses like utility companies, grocery stores, gas stations, airlines, hotels. And for years, gun shops have been categorized as miscellaneous retail or sporting goods stores. Now, after a Democrat-supported effort led by the socially progressive bank, Amalgamated Bank, gun stores will have a separate code. And so what they're trying to do here, what they're saying they're trying to do here is to see gun purchases not as miscellaneous, but as gun purchases. And that way, if someone goes out and buys a cache of guns and they're building up an arsenal, they would be able to flag that. And I want to say I'm totally pro Second Amendment. I own guns. I know how to use guns. And so I'm totally for the Second Amendment. I think it's just reasonable that there would be certain safeguards in place. I cannot own a nuclear weapon. Obviously, weapons of mass destruction. There are weapons that individuals should not have, even though we have the right to purchase guns. So I just want to say, I do think it's reasonable to use some caution related to retail. But what's happening here is they're wanting to flag gun purchases, which is not a problem within itself. This is not the government doing this officially. These are credit card companies that are doing this voluntarily, but it was led by a Democratic-supported group. But you're asking, is this kind of a first step toward monitoring our purchases? Yes. If they can be successful at this, it's like the camel putting his nose in the tent, the next thing you know, he's sleeping with you, is that this is the way that they will begin to track gun purchases, then credit card companies, banks, begin to punish, ostracize, cut off certain dealers, certain manufacturers, certain purchasers for doing things that they don't like. And so the Second Amendment gives us the right to bear arms and to defend ourselves. And so that's a very, very sacred thing. And when you lose that, when individuals lose the right to own guns without being persecuted, without being monitored and tracked, whenever we lose the right to do that and we lose our right to guns, it means the government, and now you have 87,000 new IRS agents weaponized with guns, learning how to use guns, which is beyond bizarre when you look at a border where 5 million people have crossed this year, and now we have all of these people, IRS agents out there that are armed. And so this is not the government doing this. These are credit card companies. So I'm not concerned about this specific act. I'm concerned about where it's going to go, because this is just the credit card companies reassigning a code toward gun purchases. But we also know, we all know that there are forces out there that want to omit the Second Amendment, restrict our ability to own firearms, which is horrific. What it would be for America if that did not exist. So I ultimately think that this is going to lead to an Antichrist system where a central source is telling us either that we cannot buy or sell, or that we can only purchase certain things based on what they believe that we should do. So I hope that this is helpful to you today. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for being subscribers to endtimes.com. I hope this is a blessing to you, and I'll see you next time.